My name is Alpha, and I am 29 years old working as a senior project manager at TechVision Innovations. I was sitting in our sleek boardroom watching our new VP Ryan smugly present my work to potential investors for our $100 million pitch. When I corrected his technical error, he leaned over and hissed, "I will get your boss to fire you after this." I smiled, looked directly at our CEO and said, "Dad, should I leave this meeting? Let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button to hear how I turn this corporate nightmare into the most satisfying moment of my career." My journey in the tech industry began at MIT, where I graduated with a double major in computer science and business administration. Even during college, I was passionate about bridging the gap between innovative technology and practical business solutions. After graduation, I worked for two smaller startups, learning the ropes and building my reputation for problem solving and leading successful projects. 4 years ago, I landed my dream job at TechVision Innovations, one of the fastest growing tech companies in Boston. I was initially hired as a project manager, but quickly proved myself by saving a failing product launch and turning it into one of our most profitable lines. Within 2 years, I was promoted to senior project manager, overseeing a team of 15 talented developers and analysts. My track record spoke for itself. I had successfully launched 4 major products, each exceeding revenue projections by at least 30%. I had also implemented a new project management methodology that reduced development time by 25% while improving quality metrics. The company recognized my contributions with 2 innovation awards and substantial performance bonuses. What many people did not know, and what I intentionally kept quiet, was that the CEO, Maxwell Richardson, was my father. When I applied for the job, I used my full name, Alpha Richardson Maxwell, which conveniently obscured the connection. I had different last names since my parents divorced when I was young, and I took my stepfather's surname. I wanted to succeed on my own merits, not because of nepotism. My father respected my decision and treated me like any other employee in professional settings. TechVision had grown exponentially over the past 5 years, expanding from a 50-person company to over 500 employees across 3 offices. This rapid growth created both opportunities and challenges. The company culture had always emphasized innovation, collaboration, and integrity, but maintaining these values while scaling quickly was difficult. My immediate boss, Jessica Chen, was the director of product development and one of my biggest advocates. She recognized my talents early on and gave me increasingly challenging projects, providing mentorship while also giving me room to develop my own leadership style. We had a relationship built on mutual respect and trust, frequently bouncing ideas off each other and collaborating to overcome obstacles. Everything changed when the company hired Ryan Thompson as the new vice president of innovation 6 months ago. Ryan came with an impressive resume, having worked at several prestigious tech companies and boasting about leading projects worth hundreds of millions. From day one, he made it clear that he was here to shake things up and take TechVision to the next level. My first impression of Ryan was that he had the polished charisma of a seasoned executive. He dressed impeccably in tailored suits, spoke with confident authority, and had a knack for impressive business jargon that seemed to mesmerize the board members. However, beneath that veneer, I quickly noticed something concerning. He rarely asked questions about ongoing projects or showed interest in understanding the company culture before proposing sweeping changes. The first red flag appeared during his second week. During a department presentation where team leaders were sharing current projects, he interrupted my presentation 3 times to explain my own project to me, despite getting several key details wrong. When I politely corrected him with supporting data, his smile remained fixed, but his eyes turned cold. Another concerning pattern emerged in his management style. He would often take ideas presented in meetings by team members, particularly women and younger employees, and repackage them as his own in communications to upper management. Several colleagues noticed this behavior, but most were reluctant to confront someone so high in the hierarchy. The most troubling aspect of his leadership was his tendency to create unnecessary competition among team members. He would give the same assignment to multiple people without their knowledge, then praise the approach he preferred while publicly criticizing others. This created an atmosphere of distrust and anxiety that was entirely counter to the collaborative environment we had worked so hard to build. Despite these issues, the company was moving forward with its biggest opportunity, yet a $100 million investment pitch to expand our innovative AI-driven customer experience platform into international markets. This deal was not just about funding, it represented a strategic partnership that would give us access to markets in Europe and Asia that would have taken years to develop independently. I had been centrally involved in developing this platform from its inception. I understood its technical capabilities, market positioning, and future development roadmap better than almost anyone in the company. The proposal required comprehensive knowledge of both the technology and the business strategy areas where my dual expertise was particularly valuable. The preparation for this pitch had been intense. For 3 months, my team and I had been researching potential markets, refining the technology, creating detailed financial projections, and developing a compelling presentation that would showcase both the innovation and practicality of our solution. We had conducted user testing across different cultural contexts, prepared responses to anticipated questions, and built interactive demonstrations that highlighted the system's capabilities. The stakes could not have been higher. This deal would determine whether we remained a successful national company or became a global technology leader. Hundreds of jobs and millions in revenue depended on securing this partnership. The pressure was enormous, but I thrived in these high-stakes situations. My team and I were confident in our preparation and excited about the opportunity. Little did I know that Ryan had his own agenda for this pitch, one that would put us on a collision course and ultimately lead to the most dramatic confrontation of my professional career. In the weeks following his arrival, Ryan began a subtle but persistent campaign against me. At first, it was easy to dismiss his behavior as the awkwardness of a new executive finding his footing. However, as time passed, the pattern became unmistakable and increasingly difficult to ignore. During department meetings, he had a particular talent for undermining my contributions. If I presented data supporting a particular approach, he would question the methodology despite it being industry standard. When I shared insights based on customer feedback, he would suggest that the sample size was too small or unrepresentative, even when our research team had confirmed its validity. The undermining extended beyond meetings. Ryan began excluding me from email chains discussing projects I was leading. I would discover decisions had been made without my input, then need to scramble to adjust plans accordingly. When I would inquire about being left out, he would offer a casual, "Must have been an oversight," with a smile that never reached his eyes. His dismissal of my ideas became more public and pointed. During a company-wide presentation where I was sharing the successful results of our latest product feature, Ryan interrupted to say, "This is fine for now, but we need to think bigger. Alpha tends to focus on incremental improvements when we need revolutionary change." This comment not only diminished my achievement but also mischaracterized my innovation approach, as I had previously led 2 major platform overhauls that were anything but incremental. The situation escalated when Ryan took credit for my innovative solution to a critical technical problem. Our main product had been experiencing performance issues when scaled beyond a certain number of users. Working nights and weekends with 2 senior developers, I had identified a novel architecture approach that not only resolved the performance bottleneck, but also reduced server costs by 40%. I had documented the solution and shared it with Ryan and Jessica before implementation. 3 days later, in a meeting with the executive team that I was not invited to, Ryan presented the solution as his own initiative. Jessica later told me how he had elaborated on the approach, with technical details he had clearly memorized, but did not fully understand, as evidenced by his inability to answer follow-up questions. Another tactic in Ryan's arsenal was changing deadlines without notice. A project timeline we had agreed upon in writing would suddenly be accelerated by weeks, with Ryan expressing surprise that I was not aware of the change. "I mentioned this in the leadership meeting," he would say, though no one else seemed to recall such a discussion. His criticism of my work became increasingly harsh and unjustified. During a code review session, he questioned architectural decisions that had been approved months earlier and had proven successful in production. "This is amateur work," he said loudly enough for nearby teams to hear. "This is why we need more senior leadership on these technical decisions." As these incidents accumulated, I began documenting everything meticulously. I saved emails, recorded meeting notes with timestamps, and kept a detailed journal of interactions. I was not sure what I would do with this information, but my instincts told me to create a paper trail. I also tried multiple approaches to improve the working relationship. I scheduled one-on-one meetings to better understand his vision for the department. I made efforts to align my project planning with his stated priorities. I even asked for specific feedback on how I could better support his goals for the company. Each attempt was met with vague platitudes about stepping up and thinking more strategically, without concrete examples or actionable guidance. Feeling increasingly isolated, I reached out to my mentor Samantha Rogers, who had been a senior executive at my previous company and was now a successful consultant. Over coffee one Saturday morning, I shared my situation, being careful not to reveal my family connection to the CEO. "This is a classic case of someone who feels threatened," Samantha said after listening attentively. "Your track record and technical knowledge make you a potential rival in his eyes, especially since you have strong relationships throughout the company." "But I have no interest in his job," I protested. "I love being hands-on with projects and teams." Samantha smiled knowingly. "That may be true, but people like Ryan do not think that way. In his worldview, everyone is climbing the ladder, and anyone with your capabilities is a threat. Add to that the dynamics of being a young woman in tech who is not easily intimidated, and you have a situation he feels he needs to control through dominance or elimination." Her advice was pragmatic. Continue documenting everything. Focus on building alliances with other executives. Make my achievements visible beyond my immediate department, and prepare for the possibility that the situation might not improve, despite my best efforts. You may need to consider whether this is a battle worth fighting or if your talents would be better appreciated elsewhere, she concluded. The thought of leaving TechVision was painful. I loved my team, believed in our products, and had invested years in building my position. But Samantha's words forced me to consider the toll this situation was taking on my well-being, and whether staying was worth the increasingly hostile environment. Meanwhile, my colleagues had begun to notice the unfair treatment. Marcus, a senior developer on my team, approached me after a particularly tense meeting where Ryan had dismissed my detailed analysis of user feedback. "What is his problem with you?" Marcus asked bluntly. "Everyone can see he is targeting you specifically, and it is making no sense. Your analysis was spot on." Other team members expressed similar observations and offered their support, but there was little they could do without risking their own positions. The company had a formal harassment policy, but filing a complaint against an executive who had quickly become a favorite of several board members seemed like a career-limiting move. The workplace tension was affecting team morale. People became more cautious in meetings, less willing to take risks or propose innovative ideas for fear of public criticism. The collaborative atmosphere that had been a hallmark of our department was eroding, replaced by a defensive posture focused on avoiding negative attention rather than pursuing excellence. As the date of the investor pitch approached, the situation reached a critical point. The presentation would either provide Ryan with an opportunity to further undermine my position or give me a chance to demonstrate my value so clearly that even he could not dismiss it. Either way, I knew that the coming weeks would likely determine my future at TechVision. With just 2 weeks remaining until the big pitch, the pressure intensified throughout the company. Our team was finalizing the technical demonstrations, polishing financial projections, and rehearsing presentations. Despite the growing tension with Ryan, I remained focused on making this pitch successful, understanding that the company's future growth depended on it. Ryan, however, seemed determined to assert his control over every aspect of the presentation. He began demanding last-minute changes to materials that had already been approved, requiring significant revisions to slides, demonstrations, and talking points. Some changes were minor stylistic preferences, while others represented substantial shifts in how we positioned our technology. "The investors will not care about the technical architecture," he declared during a review meeting, dismissing weeks of work preparing detailed explanations of our competitive technical advantages. "They want to hear about market domination and revenue potential. Cut all this engineering jargon." Jessica attempted to push back, explaining that these particular investors had technical backgrounds and had specifically requested information about our system architecture and scaling capabilities. Ryan overruled her, insisting that he knew what investors at this level wanted to hear. To maintain the quality of the presentation while accommodating Ryan's demands, I found myself working 14-hour days. I would spend my regular hours implementing the required changes, then stay late into the evening, recreating the technical documentation in an appendix format that could be provided if questions arose. My team followed my lead, everyone putting in extra hours to preserve the substance of our work while meeting the new requirements. The stress began taking a visible toll on me. I was sleeping poorly, skipping meals, and experiencing tension headaches that would last for days. Friends commented on my appearance, noting the dark circles under my eyes and my weight loss. Even my father texted me privately asking if everything was all right, after seeing me looking exhausted in a company-wide meeting. I assured everyone I was fine, not wanting to show weakness or seem unable to handle the pressure. In truth, I was running on adrenaline and determination sustained by my commitment to my team and the knowledge that our work deserved to be recognized. The day before the presentation, Ryan made his most aggressive move yet. I arrived at the office early to find an updated agenda for the investor meeting in my inbox. To my shock, my name had been removed from the list of presenters entirely. Instead of leading the product demonstration and technical overview as planned, I was now listed only as a support resource available to answer questions if needed. I immediately went to Jessica's office, finding her already on the phone with Ryan. From her expression and tone, it was clear she was as surprised by this change as I was. Ryan Alpha developed this platform from its inception, she was saying firmly. She knows the technical details better than anyone, and has been preparing for this presentation for weeks. Removing her makes no sense. After a pause, she continued. No, I do not agree. This change undermines our strongest position. After several more minutes of increasingly heated discussion, Jessica hung up and looked at me with frustration. He is insisting that having too many presenters will confuse the message. He wants to streamline to just himself, me, and Marcus for the technical demonstration. Marcus is excellent, I acknowledged, but he joined the project 6 months ago. He does not have the historical knowledge or comprehensive understanding that I do. Jessica nodded grimly. I know. Ryan overruled me. He said, as VP, he has final say on the presentation team, and the decision is made. I am sorry, Alpha. Though dismayed, I maintained my professionalism. What would you like me to do to support the team? Be there. Be prepared, and help Marcus with any technical questions he might struggle with, she said. This is wrong, and I will be addressing it after the pitch. But right now, we need to focus on making this presentation successful. I agreed, but as I left her office, I felt a combination of anger, disappointment, and suspicion. This felt like more than Ryan's usual undermining. It felt like a deliberate attempt to sideline me during a pivotal company moment. My suspicions were confirmed later that afternoon when I was helping Marcus prepare for his expanded role in the presentation. While reviewing the slides Ryan had modified, I noticed something alarming. The research data I had compiled on international market opportunities, which represented 3 months of in-depth analysis, had been replaced with new figures I did not recognize. Where did these projections come from? I asked Marcus. These growth estimates are much more aggressive than what our research supported. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Ryan provided those. He said they came from his personal contacts in the Asian markets and reflected more current information than what we had gathered. Further investigation revealed that Ryan had substantially altered the financial projections, technology, roadmap, and go-to-market strategy, all without consulting the teams who had developed the original plans. He had essentially rewritten our carefully researched proposal to present a far more optimistic but much less substantiated picture. More disturbingly, I discovered a draft of talking points on Ryan's desk that clearly indicated he planned to present my market analysis as his own work. The document contained phrases like "my research indicates," and based on my analysis of the international markets preceding information that had come directly from my reports. By evening, I was seriously considering my options, including the possibility of resignation. I could not support a pitch that misrepresented our capabilities and timelines, potentially setting the company up for failure to deliver on exaggerated promises. Yet walking away felt like abandoning my team and the project I had poured my heart into for years. As I sat in my apartment that night, staring at my laptop screen and weighing my choices, my phone rang. It was my father calling from his home rather than the office. "Alpha," he said when I answered, his voice concerned but measured. "I have been observing from a distance, trying to respect your boundaries, but I can see something serious is happening. Do you want to talk about it?" For a moment, I considered maintaining the professional separation we had established, but the weight of the situation overcame my resistance. I found myself explaining everything: the pattern of undermining the credit, stealing the manipulation of data for the presentation, and finally my removal from the presenting team. My father listened without interrupting, asking clarifying questions only when needed. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I had noticed some concerning behavior, he finally said, but I had no idea of the extent. I apologize for not seeing this sooner. It is not your responsibility, I assured him. I wanted to handle this professionally without special treatment. I respect that, he said. And I respect how you have handled this situation with integrity and resilience. Many would have either given up or escalated the conflict. What should I do tomorrow? I asked, feeling a rare moment of vulnerability. I cannot support a presentation that misrepresents our capabilities, but I do not want to sabotage the company's opportunity either. His response surprised me. Do you know why I have never worried about you even when you face challenges? Because you have always known your own mind and followed your own moral compass. I cannot tell you what to do tomorrow. That has to come from your own judgment. But I will tell you this: integrity is the foundation of true success. Companies can recover from lost deals, but they rarely recover from lost principles. We talked a while longer, discussing various approaches without settling on any specific plan. Before we ended the call, he said one more thing that would prove significant. Whatever you decide, I trust your judgment. And Alpha, remember that the strongest position is often the one where you have nothing to hide. As I prepared for bed, I considered my options with new clarity. I would attend the presentation tomorrow, ready to support the team as requested. But I would also be prepared to act if Ryan crossed certain lines. I would not reveal my relationship with the CEO unless absolutely necessary, but I would stand firm in protecting my work and my integrity. Tomorrow would be a turning point one way or another. The morning of the presentation arrived with the kind of perfect weather that seemed oblivious to the storm brewing inside TechVision's headquarters. I dressed with particular care, choosing a tailored navy blue suit that projected both professionalism and confidence. I arrived early, reviewing the presentation materials one last time and mentally preparing for whatever might unfold. The executive conference room gradually filled with company leadership and visiting dignitaries. Jessica nodded to me reassuringly as she took her seat at the presentation table. Marcus gave me a thumbs up from where he was setting up the technical demonstration, his nervousness visible despite the encouraging gesture. At precisely 9:30, the potential investors arrived. The delegation was led by William Andrews, founder of Andrews Capital Partners, and a legendary figure in tech investment. He was accompanied by his chief technical officer, 2 investment analysts, and representatives from a major Asian technology conglomerate that would be our strategic partner if the deal went through. My father, in his role as CEO, greeted them warmly but professionally, making introductions around the room. When he reached me, there was no hint of our personal connection, as he simply said, "And this is Alpha Maxwell, one of our senior project managers, who has been instrumental in developing the platform you will be seeing today." William Andrews shook my hand, his sharp eyes assessing me quickly. "I have heard good things about your work," he said, surprising me. "I look forward to learning more about the technical architecture you have developed." Ryan quickly inserted himself between us. "Alpha is here in a support capacity today," he said smoothly. "I will be leading you through the strategic vision and growth potential, which I think you will find most compelling." Andrews raised an eyebrow slightly, but said nothing as Ryan guided him toward his seat. The investors settled in notebooks and tablets, ready, expressions attentive but carefully neutral, giving nothing away about their preliminary thoughts. Ryan took control immediately, standing at the head of the table with commanding presence. "Ladies and gentlemen, today represents a watershed moment for the future of customer experience technology." He began, his voice confident and charismatic. "What you are about to see is not just an incremental improvement, but a revolutionary approach to AI-driven personalization that will redefine industry standards globally." For the next 20 minutes, Ryan presented a compelling overview of market opportunities and revenue projections. The figures he showed were significantly more optimistic than those my team had calculated, promising returns that seemed ambitious at best and misleading at worst. I kept my expression neutral, even as I noted William Andrews jotting down questions after several of the more exaggerated claims. Jessica followed with a solid presentation on our current market position and customer success stories, staying carefully within the bounds of what we could actually prove. She made several references to my work, referring to Alpha's team and the architecture Alpha designed, subtly reinforcing my role despite my official sidelining. When it came time for the technical demonstration, Marcus performed admirably, showing the platform's capabilities while fielding basic questions. However, when Andrews asked about the system's approach to data privacy across different regulatory environments, Marcus looked momentarily panicked before glancing in my direction. I stepped forward smoothly. "If I may," I said, addressing Andrews directly. Our system was designed from the ground up, with global privacy regulations in mind. We implemented a regional configuration architecture that allows for complete separation of data storage and processing based on local requirements, while maintaining a unified experience layer for global customers. I went on to explain the technical details in a way that was clear without being condescending, drawing on my intimate knowledge of the system's design principles and implementation. Andrews nodded with increasing interest, and his CTO began asking more detailed follow-up questions, which I answered with confidence and precision. Ryan watched this exchange with growing tension visible in his jaw and shoulders. When there was a brief pause in the conversation, he attempted to redirect attention. "These technical details, while interesting, are secondary to the market opportunity," he interjected. "The key point is that we have solved these problems in a way that allows for unprecedented scaling and market penetration." Andrews, however, was not so easily diverted. "Actually," he said, "the technical architecture is central to our interest. Many companies promise similar market outcomes, but few have solved the fundamental challenges of privacy, scalability, and cross-regulatory compliance. I would like to hear more from Alpha about how these systems actually work." For the next 15 minutes, I found myself effectively leading the meeting, explaining our technical innovations, answering increasingly specific questions, and outlining our approach to challenges that competitors had failed to resolve. The energy in the room shifted, with investors leaning forward and engaging deeply with the substance of what we had built. Ryan's expression darkened with each minute that passed. I could see him calculating how to regain control of the narrative. When the Asian technology executive asked about our plans for adapting the system for Eastern markets, Ryan saw his opportunity. "This is where my expertise becomes particularly relevant," he said, standing again. "Before joining TechVision, I led several successful expansions into Asian markets. The strategies I developed have become something of an industry standard." He then proceeded to present a series of slides outlining an international expansion strategy that was almost entirely based on the research report I had compiled. He presented my findings, my market analysis, and even my phased approach recommendation as if they were his own creation. The plagiarism was so blatant that Jessica shot me an alarmed look from across the table. I maintained my composure, but when Ryan mispresented a critical finding about regulatory requirements in Singapore, I felt compelled to speak up. "I believe there is a misunderstanding in that last point," I said as professionally as possible. "The Singaporean Personal Data Protection Act actually requires explicit consent for cross-border data transfers, which is why our implementation plan includes a local data center establishment in Phase 1, not Phase 3, as indicated." Ryan's smile remained fixed, but his eyes flashed with anger. "I think you are confused about the timeline, Alpha. The regulatory considerations are accounted for in our planning." "With respect," I countered, "I conducted the regulatory analysis personally, including consultations with local legal experts in each target market. The findings were quite clear on this point, and misunderstanding the requirements could result in significant compliance penalties and delays." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. William Andrews was watching the exchange with keen interest, his experienced eyes missing nothing of the dynamic playing out before him. Ryan attempted to move past the moment quickly. "We can discuss the minutiae of implementation later. The key takeaway is that we have a comprehensive strategy for global expansion that will generate exceptional returns on your investment." The presentation continued, but the tension remained palpable. When we broke for a short refreshment pause before the final Q&A session, Ryan cornered me by the coffee service, his back to the room, and his voice low but intense. "You are undermining me in front of the most important investors this company has ever entertained," he hissed. I do not know what your game is, but I promise you will regret this. I will get your boss to fire you after this meeting." It was at that moment, looking over Ryan's shoulder, that I saw my father watching us, his expression concerned as he observed what was clearly a confrontational interaction. Several of the investors had also noticed, including William Andrews, who was regarding us with undisguised curiosity. In that instant, I made a decision. Ryan's threat, combined with his misrepresentation of my work and the company's capabilities, had crossed a line that could not be ignored. As everyone returned to their seats for the final portion of the meeting, I knew exactly what I needed to do. As the tension from Ryan's threat still hung in the air, I took a deep breath to center myself. My heart was racing, but externally, I maintained the calm, professional demeanor I had cultivated throughout my career. This was a calculated risk I was about to take, one that could potentially backfire, but remaining silent was no longer an option. I considered the potential consequences carefully. Revealing my relationship with the CEO might lead some to question whether my position had been earned on merit. It could create awkwardness with colleagues who might feel I had deceived them. It might even backfire if Ryan somehow spun it as me hiding information or seeking special treatment. But against these concerns stood a more important principle: the integrity of our work and the company's reputation with these investors. As everyone settled back into their seats for the final Q&A session, William Andrews opened with a pointed question. "I have noticed some discrepancies in the presentation today," he said, looking between Ryan and me. "Could you clarify who exactly led the development of this platform and the market research for international expansion?" Before Ryan could respond, I decided to take the floor. I stood up slowly, gathering my thoughts. "Mr. Andrews, I believe transparency is essential here. I have led the development of this platform from its inception 3 years ago, and personally conducted or supervised all the market research presented today. There appears to be some confusion about attribution that I think we should clear up." Ryan's face flushed with anger. "Alpha is overstepping her role," he said quickly. "As VP of Innovation, I have ultimate oversight of all projects and their strategic direction. While Alpha made contributions to the technical implementation, the vision and strategy have been developed under my leadership." This blatant lie was the final straw. I looked directly at my father, sitting at the head of the table in his role as CEO, and made my decision. "Dad," I said clearly, "should I leave this meeting?" The room went completely silent. Ryan's expression transformed from anger to shock as the implication registered. The investors' reactions ranged from surprise to dawning comprehension as they looked between my father and me, seeing the family resemblance that I had never tried to hide, merely not advertise. My father maintained his composure admirably, though I could see both pride and concern in his eyes. "No, Alpha, please stay. I believe your perspective is valuable to everyone in this room." William Andrews slowly closed his notebook and leaned back in his chair. He looked directly at Ryan, his gaze sharp and evaluating. "Is this your A-team?" he asked quietly, the question hanging in the air with unmistakable significance. Ryan attempted to recover, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my ears. "I see there has been some miscommunication here. Of course, Alpha has been integral to this project. I was merely trying to present a unified front to our distinguished guests." "Miscommunication indeed," Andrews replied dryly. He turned to my father. "Mr. Richardson, I appreciate transparency in my business partnerships. Perhaps you could clarify the situation for us." My father nodded, his expression serious but calm. "Alpha joined TechVision 4 years ago through our standard hiring process. She used her full legal name, Alpha Richardson Maxwell, which happens to include both my name and her stepfather's surname. She requested no special treatment, and I have given her none. Her accomplishments here are entirely her own, earned through exceptional work and leadership." He paused, glancing briefly at Ryan before continuing. "I was not aware of the full extent of the situation that has developed recently. It appears there have been some issues with proper attribution and team dynamics that will need to be addressed." The Asian technology executive, Mr. Tanaka, spoke up for the first time. "In my experience, true innovation comes from teams where credit is shared appropriately and leadership supports, rather than suppresses talent. This situation is revealing." Ryan attempted to salvage the situation. "I completely agree," he said quickly. "TechVision has always valued its talented team members. Perhaps in my eagerness to present our best face, I failed to properly acknowledge individual contributions. That was never my intention. No one in the room appeared convinced by this sudden reversal. William Andrews particularly regarded Ryan with the kind of assessment that suggested he was reevaluating everything he had heard during the presentation. "I suggest we continue with the technical questions," my father said smoothly. "Alpha, since you designed the system architecture, perhaps you could address Mr. Andrews' earlier questions about scalability across regional markets." With the tension still thick in the air, but the immediate confrontation diffused, I resumed explaining the technical aspects of our platform. Ryan remained at the table but noticeably subdued, offering only occasional comments that were now carefully framed to acknowledge the team's work rather than claiming personal credit. Jessica skillfully redirected some questions to other team members present, showcasing the depth of talent we had assembled. Marcus recovered his confidence and demonstrated some of the more impressive features of the system with renewed enthusiasm. Throughout the remainder of the presentation, I maintained absolute professionalism, focusing on providing accurate information about our capabilities without exaggeration or embellishment. I was careful not to appear to be leveraging my newly revealed connection to the CEO, instead letting the quality of our work speak for itself. As we concluded the formal presentation, William Andrews and his team requested a brief private discussion before proceeding to the lunch that had been arranged. My father agreed, and our team filed out to the adjacent conference room to wait. In that room, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken questions. Ryan immediately excused himself, saying he needed to make an urgent phone call. The moment he left, several colleagues approached me with expressions ranging from surprise to newfound understanding. "So that explains why you never talked about your family," Marcus said with a small smile. "I just assumed it was a private matter." "It was," I replied. "I wanted to succeed or fail based on my own merit, not my family connection." Jessica squeezed my arm supportively. "For what it is worth, no one who has worked with you would ever question whether you earned your position. Your work speaks for itself." The team's support was touching, but I was acutely aware that the investors were currently deciding our fate in the other room. Whatever personal satisfaction I might feel at having stood up to Ryan's bullying, the company's future remained hanging in the balance. The executive boardroom remained tense as we awaited the investors' decision. Team members spoke in hushed voices, speculating about what might be happening in the adjacent room. Ryan had returned from his phone call and was standing alone near the window, his usual confident demeanor notably diminished. After what felt like an eternity but was actually about 20 minutes, my father returned with William Andrews and his team. Their expressions were carefully neutral, revealing nothing about the outcome of their deliberations. "We would like to continue our discussions," Andrews announced, "but with some adjustments to the format. Specifically, we would appreciate a deeper technical review session with Alpha and her development team, followed by a separate discussion of market strategy with Mr. Richardson and the executive team." He glanced briefly at Ryan before continuing. "We believe this approach will give us the most accurate understanding of both the technology's capabilities and the company's vision for its deployment." It was a diplomatic solution that effectively sidelined Ryan without creating an openly uncomfortable situation. My father agreed readily, and we rearranged the afternoon schedule to accommodate the investors' request. During lunch, which was served in a private dining room adjacent to the conference facilities, I found myself seated next to Mr. Tanaka from the Asian technology conglomerate. He spoke quietly while others were engaged in separate conversations. "In Japan, we have a concept called sekente, which refers to one's social reputation and appearance," he said. "Many maintain their sekente at all costs, even when it means perpetuating falsehoods. I was impressed by your willingness to risk yours for the sake of truth." "Thank you," I replied, touched by his understanding. "It was not an easy decision." He nodded thoughtfully. "The most valuable business partners are those who will tell us uncomfortable truths rather than comfortable fictions. Remember that as your career progresses." The afternoon sessions proceeded smoothly, with my team providing detailed explanations of our technology while answering increasingly specific questions from the investors' technical experts. Without Ryan's presence, the atmosphere was noticeably more collaborative and authentic. By the end of the day, the investors had requested additional information on several aspects of our platform, but indicated strong interest in moving forward. While not a definitive commitment, it was a positive sign that the morning's drama had not derailed the opportunity entirely. As the investors departed, William Andrews shook my hand firmly. "I look forward to seeing where you take this technology," he said meaningfully. "Leadership comes in many forms, and not always from the positions one might expect." Once our visitors had left, my father asked me to join him in his office. It was the first time we had been alone since the revelation, and as the door closed behind us, the professional veneer we had both maintained slipped slightly. "Are you okay?" he asked, his concern now fully visible. I nodded, suddenly feeling the emotional weight of the day. "Yes, but I am sorry if I put you in a difficult position. I did not plan for it to happen that way." "You have nothing to apologize for," he said firmly. "If anything, I should apologize to you for not recognizing what was happening sooner. I respected your wish for independence to the point where I may have missed signs of a serious problem." We discussed the situation at length. My father explained that he had noticed some concerning behaviors from Ryan, but had attributed them to the adjustment period common with new executives. He had not been aware of the extent of the undermining, credit stealing, and manipulation until today. "What impressed me most," he said, "was not that you stood up for yourself, though I am proud of that too. It was that you did it in a way that prioritized the company's integrity. You could have called out Ryan's misrepresentations more directly or earlier, which might have felt satisfying but would have damaged the company's standing with the investors." I appreciated his understanding but still had concerns. "Some people might now question whether I earned my position." "Anyone who works with you knows better," he replied. "And for those who do not, your work will continue to speak for itself. Besides hiding, a truth is different from earning your place. You have undoubtedly earned yours." As our conversation concluded, he mentioned that there would need to be a formal investigation into Ryan's conduct. "This is not about protecting you," he clarified. "This is about protecting the company culture and ensuring that all employees are treated with respect and given proper credit for their work." The following days brought significant developments. Human Resources initiated a formal investigation into Ryan's management practices, interviewing team members not just from my department but from across the organization. The pattern that emerged was consistent with what I had experienced, revealing that Ryan had engaged in similar behaviors with several employees, particularly women and younger team members. Jessica provided documentation of multiple incidents where Ryan had taken credit for others' work in executive communications. Several developers came forward with examples of Ryan publicly criticizing their work, despite having no technical expertise in their areas of specialization. The records I had kept proved invaluable, providing time-stamped evidence of a pattern of behavior that could not be dismissed as misunderstandings or differences in management style. Ryan predictably attempted to defend himself by painting me as manipulative and opportunistic. "She clearly used her family connection to undermine me, when I was simply trying to provide stronger leadership to a department that had grown complacent," he argued in his formal response to HR. This defense fell apart when confronted with the extensive documentation from multiple sources. Particularly damning was evidence that he had substantially altered financial projections and market research without consulting the teams that had developed them, potentially misleading investors about the company's capabilities and timelines. The final confrontation came in a closed meeting with my father, the HR director, and 2 board members. I was not present, but Jessica, who had been asked to provide additional context later, shared what had happened. Ryan had begun by attempting to frame the situation as a personality conflict that had been blown out of proportion. When presented with the documented evidence of his actions, he shifted to blaming company culture. "If expectations about credit attribution were unclear, that reflects a systemic issue, not individual misconduct," he had argued. My father, maintaining his professional composure, despite what must have been personal anger, had responded simply, "Our company values are clearly stated in every office and included in the executive handbook you received upon hiring. The first of these is, we give credit where credit is due. There is no ambiguity there." One of the board members, a woman who had built her own successful tech company before joining our board, had been particularly direct. "If you cannot recognize the contributions of the people who work for you, you cannot effectively lead them. Leadership is about elevating others, not elevating yourself at their expense." The meeting had concluded with Ryan being placed on administrative leave pending final determination of appropriate action. He chose to resign instead, sending a company-wide email describing his decision as pursuing other opportunities that better align with my leadership philosophy. Few were fooled by this framing, but it allowed for a relatively dignified exit that minimized further disruption to the company. A brief statement was issued to clients and partners, and attention quickly refocused on the positive developments with our potential investors. 3 weeks after the dramatic investor presentation, we received the news everyone had been hoping for. William Andrews and his consortium had decided to move forward with the investment, committing the full $100 million to our international expansion. The terms were favorable, reflecting their confidence in both our technology and our company leadership. In the official announcement, Andrews specifically mentioned the technical innovation and integrity demonstrated by TechVision as key factors in their decision. Reading between the lines, it was clear that our handling of the difficult situation during the pitch had actually enhanced rather than damaged their perception of the company. The successful closing of the deal brought widespread celebration throughout the organization. My team, who had worked tirelessly on the platform and pitch materials, were particularly jubilant. The company announced substantial performance bonuses for everyone who had contributed to the project, a tangible recognition of their efforts and dedication. In the reorganization that followed Ryan's departure, Jessica was promoted to the VP position, a move that was met with universal approval. She had demonstrated not only technical and business acumen, but also the kind of ethical leadership that aligned with the company's core values. My role evolved as well. I was appointed to the newly created position of Chief Technology Strategist, with responsibility for guiding our technical vision as we expanded internationally. This role allowed me to remain hands-on with the technology while taking on greater strategic responsibilities, the perfect balance for my interests and skills. The professional recognition was gratifying, but the personal aftermath was more complex. Initially, I struggled with the fallout from the confrontation. Despite the positive outcome, the experience of being undermined, threatened, and forced into a public revelation had left emotional scars that were not immediately visible. I found myself second-guessing decisions, worried about how my actions might be perceived. Had I handled the situation correctly? Should I have found a way to address the issues earlier or more privately? Was I now viewed differently by colleagues who had learned about my family connection? These concerns manifested in subtle ways. I would over-explain my reasoning in meetings as if constantly justifying myself. I worked even longer hours, feeling a need to prove that my new position was earned rather than granted. I became more reserved in social interactions with colleagues, uncertain about their true perceptions of me. Recognizing these patterns, I decided to seek help from a professional executive coach. Dr. Elizabeth Palmer specialized in working with leaders who had experienced workplace trauma or significant professional challenges. Her perspective proved invaluable in processing what had happened and finding a healthy path forward. What you experienced was a form of workplace bullying compounded by identity concealment stress, she explained during one of our sessions. Even though you had valid reasons for not disclosing your family relationship, maintaining that separation created an additional layer of tension when you were already under attack professionally. With her guidance, I began to address the imposter syndrome that had intensified following these events. We worked on strategies for separating my professional identity from both family connections and past traumas. She helped me recognize that my response to Ryan's behavior had demonstrated strength rather than weakness, integrity rather than failure. The most resilient leaders, she told me, are not those who avoid wounds, but those who heal from them intentionally and integrate those lessons into their leadership approach. Gradually, I rebuilt my confidence not by burying the experience, but by transforming it into wisdom that informed my interactions with my own team. I became particularly attuned to ensuring that credit was properly attributed, that team members felt safe, raising concerns, and that different communication styles were respected rather than penalized. My relationship with my father evolved as well. While we maintained professional boundaries at work, we no longer felt the need for such strict separation in all contexts. We began having monthly dinners where we could speak freely about both family and business matters, developing a more integrated relationship that honored both aspects of our connection. During one such dinner about 6 months after the investor presentation, he shared a perspective that particularly resonated with me. He said, I founded this company with the hope that it would someday be more than just a business, that it would represent certain values in the world. Watching you stand up for those values, even when it was difficult, showed me that the company will be in good hands long after I step aside. The company implemented several important changes in the wake of these events. New policies were established to ensure proper attribution of work and ideas. Training programs were developed to help managers recognize and prevent bullying behaviors. Most significantly, a more robust system for reporting concerns about executive conduct was created with clear protections against retaliation. As our international expansion progressed, I had the opportunity to work closely with Mr. Tanaka and his team. The respect established during that pivotal meeting translated into a collaborative partnership that yielded innovations neither company would likely have developed alone. His concept of sakente became something of a personal touchstone for me, a reminder that true reputation is built on substance rather than appearance. Looking back on that challenging period from the perspective of a year later, I can identify several key lessons that fundamentally shaped my approach to leadership and life. First, documentation is not paranoia. It is prudent self-protection. Had I not kept meticulous records of Ryan's behavior in my own work, the outcome might have been very different. In professional settings where credit and contribution are currency, having a clear paper trail is not just defensive but essential. Second, workplace bullying thrives in isolation. Ryan's tactics were effective initially because he isolated me from support systems and made me question whether speaking up would be seen as weakness. Building strong professional networks and allies who can validate your experience becomes crucial in such situations. Third, integrity may have short-term costs, but yields long-term benefits. Standing up for the truth was momentarily uncomfortable, but ultimately strengthened my position and the company's culture. The investors respected authenticity more than they valued a perfectly polished but fundamentally dishonest presentation. Fourth, your response to adversity shapes your character more than the adversity itself. I could have become bitter, vengeful, or perpetually defensive after this experience. Instead, I chose to transform it into greater empathy for others facing similar challenges and clearer boundaries about what constitutes acceptable professional behavior. Finally, true strength often lies in vulnerability. Revealing my family connection felt like exposing a weakness in that moment, but paradoxically became a position of power, precisely because I had nothing left to hide. There is liberation in transparency that deception can never provide. As our company continues to grow globally, these lessons inform not just my personal leadership, but the culture we are building across borders and teams. The $100 million deal that almost became a professional nightmare instead became the catalyst for meaningful institutional change and personal growth. So, if you ever find yourself facing a similar situation, remember that documentation is your ally, isolation is your enemy, and integrity, though sometimes costly, is always your best long-term strategy. Stand firm in your truth even when others try to rewrite it. The most satisfying success is not just achieving your goals but maintaining your self-respect throughout the journey. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who tried to take credit for your work or undermine you? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories about navigating difficult workplace situations with integrity. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most important person to impress is not your boss or investors, but the person you see in the mirror each morning.